All right, so today we're diving headfirst into a real mystery.
Oh, yeah.
The case of Somaliland.
Interesting.
Someone sent in this article arguing that Somaliland should be recognized as a country.
Right.
And I gotta admit, before reading this, I had no idea this place even existed.
You're not alone.
So fill me in. What's the deal with Somaliland?
Well, it's almost like a country in hiding, you know? They've got everything you'd expect, government, people, the whole 9 yards. But no one wants to officially recognize them. It's really fascinating.
All right, so before we get into the why of it all, let's start with the basics.
Sure.
Where even Somaliland. And what does it even mean to be an unrecognized country?
Okay, so picture the Horn of Africa.
Okay.
Somaliland's right on the northeastern tip.
Right.
Jutting out into this super important shipping lane, strategically, it's a pretty vital spot.
Makes sense.
It used to be a British protectorate way back when, got its independence in 1960.
Right.
And then, well, things took a bit of a turn.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So it was its own country.
It was. For a hot minute, at least.
This is already more complicated than I thought.
Just a bit.
So they were independent, and then what? What happened?
Well, just 5 days after getting their independence, they decided to join with Italian Somaliland.
Really?
Yeah, to form the Somali Republic.
So they gain their freedom and then almost immediately give it up. That's wild.
Like, no, right? It's like gaining your freedom and then immediately saying, nah, let's team up instead.
So what was the thinking behind that? Why would they do that?
The article talks about this pan-Somali dream.
Right, I saw that.
And the idea was to unite all Somali people under one flag.
Okay, strength in numbers kind of thing.
Exactly. But the article suggests it wasn't exactly a fairy tale union. Promises made to Somalilanders were broken. They faced a lot of marginalization.
Really?
And then things took a really dark turn under Siad Barre's regime in the 1980s.
Yeah, the article mentioned that, didn't shy away from the word genocide.
Yeah, and rightfully so. It was a brutal period.
Absolutely.
Thousands killed, cities destroyed. It was horrific.
I can't even imagine.
It's important to understand this context, you know.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that.
Because when the Somali state collapsed in 1991, Somaliland basically said, we're out.
So they declared independence again.
Exactly. Back to square one.
So let me get this straight. They've been running their own show for, what, over 30 years now? Functioning like a country?
Pretty much.
But the world's basically ignoring them?
More or less.
I don't get it. Why wouldn't they want to be recognized? Seems like it would be good for everyone.
Well, that's where things get complicated.
Okay.
International recognition, it's not as simple as just filling out some paperwork.
Right.
It's a whole web of politics, power plays, and sometimes just plain old inertia.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But the article makes a pretty strong case that this isn't just about Somaliland wanting a pat on the back, you know?
So there's more to it than just wanting that recognition, that status.
Oh, absolutely. There are some serious arguments here.
Okay, let's hear them then. What are the legal reasons they deserve to be recognized?
Well, first of all, there's this concept of self-determination.
Okay.
It's a pretty big deal in international law. Basically means people have the right to choose their own government.
Makes sense.
And Somalilanders held a referendum in 2001, overwhelmingly voted for independence.
Wow, so they literally had a vote? The people spoke?
Exactly. You can't get much clearer than that.
I guess not, but wouldn't that mean any group could just declare themselves a country? There have to be some rules, right?
Oh, there are, definitely.
Okay, good.
The article talks about this idea of uti possidetis juris.
Uti what now?
Haha, yeah, it's a mouthful.
It is.
But it basically means respecting colonial borders.
All right, and how does that apply to Somaliland? I'm not quite seeing the connection.
So Somaliland, as a former British protectorate, has its own distinct borders.
Right.
Totally separate from Somalia.
Okay.
So recognizing them wouldn't be like redrawing the map all crazy. It'd be respecting the historical lines that were already there.
Oh, I see. So they're not trying to carve out new territory. They're saying, hey, these were always our borders, even back in colonial times.
Exactly. It's a clever argument.
It really is.
And then there's this other concept they bring up, remedial secession.
Remedial secession.
Yeah, essentially it argues that if a group has suffered severe abuse, they have a right to break away.
Oh, wow.
And considering what Somalilanders went through under Barre's regime...
It's like they're saying, we didn't just want to leave, we had to leave.
Exactly. They're not just arguing technicalities here. They're saying their very existence as a separate entity is rooted in escaping oppression.
That definitely adds another layer to it.
It makes you think, you know, what does it really take for a nation to be recognized?
Yeah, big questions.
So we've got strong legal arguments, a pretty compelling backstory.
Check.
But a lot of countries have those things. What makes Somaliland different? Why are they actually a contender for recognition and not just wishful thinking?
Yeah, good question. What makes them stand out?
Well, that's what's so intriguing.
Okay, I'm hooked.
While the world was looking the other way, Somaliland was busy building something remarkable.
Okay, you've got to tell me more.
Let's dive into that.
So Somaliland's got this whole legal case, this history of being ignored, but you're saying they didn't just sit around and wait.
Nope, not our
They
fault.
actually built something. Like what?
Okay, get this. While the world was busy looking the other way, Somaliland was quietly building a democracy.
Really?
A stable, functioning democracy.
Okay, so not just claiming to be a country.
No.
They're actually doing the work.
They've held free and fair elections.
Wow.
Multiple times, peaceful transitions of power, the whole 9 yards,
That's pretty rare in that part of the world, isn't it?
especially in that region, yeah.
So they're not messing around. They've got everything.
They've got a constitution, their own currency, even their own military.
A military.
Yeah, and it's been really successful at keeping the peace.
Wow, they really do have all the pieces, huh?
They're like the overachiever of unrecognized countries.
Uh-huh. I like that. The article also mentioned their economic growth, especially around the Berbera Port.
Ah, yes.
It's first.
What's the significance there?
Berbera is a huge deal for trade, strategically vital.
Right.
And Somaliland's been really smart about developing it.
So they're attracting investment, creating jobs.
All of that.
Yeah.
And they're doing it with basically no international aid.
It's like they're bootstrapping their way to success.
Exactly. It's pretty impressive.
I bet that's inspiring for people living there.
It is. They've got a lot to be proud of.
But if they're already functioning as a country, what's the big deal with not being recognized? Is it just a matter of pride?
It's a lot more than pride, actually.
Oh,
Imagine trying to run a business,
okay.
but no bank will give you a loan because technically your country doesn't exist.
Ah, so it's affecting their economy, their ability to function in the global market.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
They face huge obstacles when it comes to international trade.
Right. Investment, even things like getting visas.
Oh, wow. So it's impacting their daily lives.
Yeah, it's like they're constantly hitting a wall because of this lack of recognition.
That's got to be so frustrating, especially for young people trying to build a future.
It is. There's this real sense of being stuck in limbo.
Yeah, the article mentioned that.
It's more than just politics. It's affecting people's lives in a very real way.
Right, it has real consequences.
The article shares stories of entrepreneurs struggling to get funding,
Oh, I bet.
students facing discrimination because of their passport,
Wow.
even families being separated because of visa issues.
Man, that's heartbreaking.
It is. You really start to see the human cost of this whole political stalemate.
It's easy to forget about those personal stories when you're talking about big political issues.
It's important to remember the people at the heart of it.
Absolutely. So they're facing all these challenges, but it sounds like they're resilient.
Oh, incredibly resilient.
They haven't given up hope.
Not at all.
That's good to hear.
In fact, the article argues that recognizing Somaliland could actually have positive effects.
Positive effects, like how?
Think about it.
Oh,
You have Somaliland, this island of peace and democracy,
right.
in a region known for conflict and instability.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's like a beacon of hope,
Yeah.
showing that another path is possible.
A different way of doing things.
Exactly. And from a practical perspective,
Yeah.
recognizing Somaliland could create new opportunities
Like what?
for trade, for investment, benefiting not just Somaliland, but the whole region.
So it's like unlocking all this potential that's been dormant for too long.
Exactly. There's so much to gain.
I could see that, but let's be realistic for a second.
Sure.
There have to be some concerns about recognizing Somaliland.
Of course, there always are.
It can't be all sunshine and roses.
Definitely not.
So what are some of the worries people have?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is the potential for instability.
Instability.
Remember, Somalia, from which Somaliland declared independence, still claims Somaliland as part of its territory.
Oh, right. That's a tricky situation.
So there's a worry that recognizing Somaliland could reignite the conflict.
Like it would be seen as a hostile move.
Exactly. Some people argue it could set a dangerous precedent,
I can see that.
like encouraging other breakaway regions to declare independence.
Leading to more chaos.
Potentially, yeah.
And what about the African Union?
Yeah, they've been historically hesitant to recognize new states.
Right.
There's this idea that recognizing Somaliland could undermine the idea of a unified Africa
Interesting.
and potentially open up a Pandora's box of border disputes and secessionist claims.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a concern.
It's a complex issue for sure.
No easy answers.
Definitely not.
So we've got these potential risks, but the article seemed to suggest that the benefits outweigh them.
Yeah, they presented some pretty strong counter-arguments.
All right, let's hear them.
So on the conflict issue, they point out that Somaliland has been peaceful and stable for over 30 years.
That's true.
They've actively sought dialogue with Somalia.
So they're not trying to avoid the issue.
Nope. And they've even cooperated on things like counterterrorism efforts.
So it's not like they're trying to make enemies.
Exactly. They seem genuinely committed to peaceful coexistence.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about the African Union?
So for the African Union, the article suggests that recognizing Somaliland could actually strengthen the organization.
Now that seems counterintuitive.
I know, right? But think about it.
Okay.
By recognizing Somaliland, the African Union could show its commitment to self-determination and good governance. It would be a powerful message.
Like, we support those who uphold democratic values.
Exactly, and it would encourage other countries to follow suit.
So it's about rewarding positive behavior.
And setting a positive precedent.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
It reframes the whole issue.
It does. So they're making the case for these benefits, but the article also went a step further.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that continuing to ignore Somaliland could actually be dangerous.
That's right.
Dangerous. How so?
Well, for one thing, it breeds resentment and frustration.
Makes sense.
It's like telling them their efforts don't matter. And that can push people toward more extreme solutions.
So by trying to avoid conflict, we might actually be making it more likely.
Exactly.
That's a bit ironic.
It is. And then there are the missed opportunities.
Right. We talked about those.
Somaliland has so much to offer the world.
In terms of trade, security.
And their inspiring story of resilience.
Yeah. By keeping them in limbo, we're missing out.
We are. It's like clinging to an outdated map while the world is changing around us.
It really is. So we've got these competing arguments, potential risks, potential benefits.
It's a complicated situation.
What do you think the future holds for Somaliland?
That's the million-dollar question.
Isn't it?
The article suggests the tide might be turning in their favor. There's growing international interest in their case.
That's good to hear.
Several countries have established informal diplomatic ties.
Wow, so they're being taken seriously.
Even the United States has started to engage more directly.
So maybe, just maybe, we'll see that Somaliland flag flying at the UN one day.
It's definitely possible. And if it happens, it'll be a testament to the perseverance of the Somaliland people.
We fought hard for this.
They have, but even if it doesn't happen, their story is still incredibly important.
It raises big questions.
About what it means to be a nation.
About self-determination.
About the challenges of navigating the global political landscape.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening for me.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's a fascinating story.
It is.
Of resilience, self-determination, and the struggle for recognition.
It's a story that deserves to be heard.
Absolutely. So what's the one thing you think our listeners should take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that there are always unseen stories out there.
Like Somaliland's.
Exactly. Untold perspectives waiting to be discovered.
It's a challenge to our assumptions.
And an invitation to look beyond the headlines.
To engage with the complexities of the world.
Exactly.
I love that. Big thanks to you for guiding us through this incredible story.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listener, thanks for sharing this fascinating article with us.
That was a great choice.
It's amazing how a single source can spark such a deep dive.
It really is.
So keep those sources coming.
We're always looking for new deep dives.
You never know where our next exploration will lead us.
That's the beauty of it.
Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Always.
So we talked about the potential downsides, this fear of instability.
Right.
And the African Union's kind of hesitant, right?
They have been, yeah.
But the article almost seemed to suggest that maybe, just maybe, some of those fears are overblown.
Yeah, they do make some interesting counterpoints.
Okay, so what are their arguments? How do they address those concerns?
Well, first, on that whole conflict issue, they point out that Somaliland's been peaceful and stable
for a long time.
For over 30 years, yeah. And they've even actively tried to have dialogue with Somalia.
Oh, wow. So they're not just ignoring the problem, hoping it'll go away?
Nope, not at all. And get this, they've actually cooperated with Somalia on certain things, like counterterrorism efforts.
Really?
Yeah, it's not like they're trying to provoke anything, you know?
So they're not this rogue state, guns blazing, trying to break everything apart.
Not at all. They seem genuinely committed to finding peaceful solutions.
It sounds like they're actually trying to be part of the solution.
Exactly. And then when it comes to the African Union, The article makes this kind of surprising argument.
Okay.
They say recognizing Somaliland wouldn't actually weaken the African Union.
Really? I would have thought the opposite.
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Totally.
But they're saying it might actually strengthen it.
Okay, I'm listening. How could that be?
And think of it this way. The African Union could come out and say, hey, we support self-determination, we support good governance, even in these tough situations.
And that would make them look good.
It would boost their credibility, their moral authority even.
So instead of saying no out of fear, they'd be saying yes to progress.
Exactly.
Rewarding a country that's actually upholding democratic value.
Right. And maybe even encouraging other countries to do the same.
Setting a positive precedent, almost like a model for others to follow.
I like how you put that. So it's not just about avoiding risks.
It's about promoting the good stuff.
Exactly. And the article even goes a step further. They argue that the risks of not recognizing Somaliland might actually be greater.
Now that's interesting. What do they mean by that?
Well, think about it. Ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away.
True enough.
And in this case, it could make things worse.
By ignoring them, we can make things worse for Somaliland.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, how so?
Well, for one, it just breeds resentment and frustration, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like telling them their efforts don't matter, all the work they've done to build a peaceful, democratic society. It's like it doesn't count.
It's like a slap in the face.
Exactly. And that can push people towards more extreme solutions.
So by trying to avoid conflict, we might actually be creating the conditions that make it more likely.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
It is. And we're also missing out on all the potential benefits, right?
Oh, absolutely. Somaliland has so much to offer.
In terms of trade, security cooperation, their unique perspective.
It's like we're holding everyone back, including ourselves.
Wow, this has been a really thought-provoking deep dive. I had no idea.
It's a fascinating case.
It's incredible how a place I'd never even heard of could raise such big questions.
About nationhood, global politics, what it means to be recognized.
So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for Somaliland?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is.
The article does suggest that things might be starting to change, though.
Oh, for the better.
It seems like there's growing international interest in Somaliland's case.
Okay, that's encouraging.
More and more countries are engaging with them, even if it's just informally.
So they're being taken seriously.
It seems that way, yeah. Even the United States has started to step up its involvement.
Wow. So maybe there's hope for Somaliland after all.
It's definitely possible, and if they do get recognized, it'll be a real testament to their resilience.
They never gave up?
They kept fighting for their dream, even when the odds were stacked against them.
It's an inspiring story.
It really is, but even if they don't get recognized, their story still matters.
Because it challenges our assumptions.
It forces us to look at the world differently.
To think about things from a new perspective.
And to remember that there are always more stories out there waiting to be heard.
Absolutely. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. Huge thanks to you for guiding us through it.
It was my pleasure. Always happy to explore these complex issues.
And to our listener, thank you for sharing this incredible article with us.
It was a fantastic choice. Really sparked a great conversation.
It's amazing how one single source can lead us down such a fascinating rabbit hole.
That's the beauty of these deep dives.
So keep those sources coming. You never know where our next exploration will take us.
That's right. Always be curious. Always keep learning.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
See you then.